Why do you give 100% every single day, yet find yourself falling behind people who barely seem to try? You're putting in 12-hour shifts while they're clocking out after 6, yet they're the ones actually winning. It feels like the universe is playing favorite, leaving you with nothing but a sore back and a stagnant bank account. You are likely exhausted, not just in your muscles but in your very soul, simply tired of being tired with zero results to show for it. It's a dangerous trap, because effort without strategy is just a one-way ticket to a life-altering burnout. You're swinging your axe with everything you've got, but if that blade is dull, you're just making noise. But what if I told you that the heaviest weight you're carrying right now isn't even yours to bear? Today, that cycle ends. This isn't a lecture on hustle. It's the key to changing how you work forever by finally mastering the high-level law of leverage. There is a specific reason why the oasis feels further away every time you step forward, and it has nothing to do with your strength. I will reveal the invisible anchor dragging you down in just a moment. But first, you need to hear the story of a man who believed his pain was his paycheck. Ever wonder why some folks glide through life's toughest deserts while you're stuck, parched and bone-tired? You're giving it everything you've got, yet the oasis feels like it's just getting further away every day. It's a bitter pill to swallow when your all isn't enough to even break even with the sun. Let's face it, just putting in more miles doesn't mean you're actually getting any closer to water. You've been told since you were a kid that sweat is the only currency that matters, but the world is full of exhausted people who are still completely broke and utterly miserable. If sheer effort was the golden ticket, the hardest workers would be the ones running the entire show. But here is the truth no one tells you. You aren't just exhausted because of the work. You are exhausted because you are carrying stones that were never yours to lift. You're burning yourself alive for a bit of warmth while the high performers are building a vehicle. In a moment, I'm going to show you the exact moment when dedication becomes a death sentence, and why your pride in your blisters is actually your biggest enemy. Before that, you must meet Thomas, the man who almost died trying to be a hero of sweat. Meet Thomas. He didn't just walk, he marched like he was at war. He had 2 massive barrels of water strapped to his back, weighing him down until his spine felt like it would snap. Every morning, he'd heave those suckers up and set off into the heat, convinced that if his muscles weren't screaming, he just wasn't trying hard enough. To Thomas, exhaustion was a badge of honor, a silent testimony to his grit. He measured his worth by the depth of the grooves left in his shoulder. He was so busy grinding that he didn't realize he was actually just grinding himself down into the dust. He'd collapse at night, thinking his calluses were the price of a future kingdom, honestly believing the universe owed him a win because he'd suffered the most. But Thomas was making a fatal mistake. He was carrying the weight of the water, the weight of the barrel, and the weight of his own ego, all at once. He was swinging a dull axe and wondering why the tree wouldn't fall. What Thomas didn't know, and what you might be missing right now, is that there is a way to move 10 times the cargo with zero strain on your back. There is a hidden system that allows some to thrive while the heroes of sweat get buried. I'm about to show you Richard, who faced the same sun, but had a secret that made the desert feel like a playground. But wait until you see the one thing Richard refused to carry. It's the exact same thing that is paralyzing your progress right now. Then there's Richard. He moved across the shifting dunes like he was out for a Sunday stroll. Instead of those back-breaking barrels, he had a light pack and a sturdy camel by his side. While Thomas was puffing and panting, Richard was sipping cool water in the shade, watching the clouds roll by. To an outsider, or to someone addicted to the grind, Richard looked lazy. But Richard wasn't waiting for luck. He was waiting for the temperature to drop so his movement actually counted. He didn't believe in using his own spine as a structural support for his entire business. He leveraged a system, the camel, to do the heavy lifting while he kept his mind sharp for the decisions that really mattered. The result? He arrived days ahead of the pack with double the inventory and triple the energy to close the best deal. What Richard understood, and what Thomas was about to learn the hard way, is that success is a game of subtraction, not addition. Richard didn't just have a better animal, He had a mental filter that allowed him to say no to the weights that Thomas wore as badges of honor. But what happens when the desert changes the rule? Even the best systems can fail if you don't know the core navigator's secret that I'll reveal when we reach the sandstorm. Suddenly, the sky turned a bruised purple as a massive sandstorm came screaming across the flats. The wind didn't just blow, it rearranged the entire map, erasing every landmark Thomas usually relied on. Now, this is where most hustlers make their fatal mistake. They think speed can fix a total lack of direction. Thomas tightened his straps and started sprinting, convinced that more hustle would outpace the shifting earth. But here's the kicker. Those heavy barrels he was so proud of started acting like anchors in the deep sand. Every step he took, he'd sink up to his knees. His proof of dedication was literally dragging him into a grave. It turns out that when the environment changes, brute force is just a fast way to get buried alive. He pushed through the night, refusing to admit he was utterly whipped, wheezing just one more mile, while he couldn't even see 2 feet in front of him. He walked 20 grueling miles just to end up exactly where he'd started, but with half the water. His dedication had become his own prison cell. But here is the chilling question. How many miles have you walked in circles this year because you refused to drop a barrel that no longer serves you? Most people think they are moving forward, but they are just spinning tires in the mud. In the next chapter, you'll see the exact moment Thomas realized his life was a lie, and the one item Richard used to navigate the chaos that you can start using today to save your energy. But only if you're willing to admit your current map is broken. Thomas lay there, face down in the scorching grit, feeling like a battery that's finally hit zero. Those trusty barrels were still strapped to his back, but they felt more like tombstones than tools now. It's a gut-wrenching moment when you realize your grind has led you straight to a dead end. Out of the shimmering heat, Richard appeared, looking like he'd just stepped off a relaxing stroll. No heavy lifting, no gasping for air, just a man, a camel, and a plan that actually held water. Humbled and barely clinging to life, Thomas finally asked the million-dollar question. I've walked further, bled more, and carried 10 times the weight. Why does the sand let you pass with a smile while it's swallowing me whole? Richard didn't mock him. He sighed like a mentor watching a student fail a very simple test. He knew Thomas was suffering from the most common disease in the world, the hard work delusion. It's the same trap you're in when you think staying late or carrying everyone else's problem makes you a hero, when in reality, it just makes you a target for burnout. Richard reached into his pack, pulling out a small object that was about to flip Thomas's entire world upside down. But what he showed him wasn't a magic wand. It was a tool for strategic refusal that you likely have in your pocket right now, but are using all wrong. I'll show you how to recalibrate in the next few minutes. Richard pulled a polished brass compass from his pocket and held it out for Thomas to see. While Thomas had been obsessing over his own footprints, his effort, his pain, and his history, Richard was keeping his eye on the needle. You see, most people focus on the exhaustion of the step instead of the accuracy of the direction. It's the difference between running on a treadmill and actually reaching the finish line of your dream. You're measuring progress in sweat, my friend. But the desert only cares about the North Star, Richard said. In your life, you might call this busy work, that frantic feeling of doing 100 things while accomplishing 0. 1 mile walked in the right direction is worth 10 miles of sprinting toward a literal cliff. It's about sharpening the mind so the body doesn't have to pay a price it can't afford. Thomas stared at the needle, finally realizing that his exhaustion wasn't a sign of success, but a symptom of bad planning. But here is the secret Richard didn't say out loud yet. The reason most people can't even look at their compass is that their hands are too full of stones that don't belong to them. You can't navigate if you're too busy clutching the heavy burdens of others' expectations. I'm about to show you the 3 laws of leverage that Richard used to turn his desert crossing into a stroll. But there is one law in particular, the law of the shade, that will feel like a sin to your hustle brain. You'll see why doing nothing at the right time is the most productive thing once you understand what's in the next section. Richard smiled and explained that a compass is just one part of a much larger, more powerful machine. Success isn't found in the weight of your burden, but in the leverage you apply to move it. He outlined the 3 hidden rules that separate the 1% who thrive from the 99% who are just barely surviving the heat. First, look at the camel. It's a system, an automated heavy lifter. In your world, this might be a piece of software or a delegation strategy that runs while you're asleep. Why use your own spine to carry every single pound when you can build a digital beast of burden to do it? Stop being the engine and start becoming the one who steers the machine. Then there is the compass of focus. It's about mastering the vital 20% of your grind that actually puts money in your pocket while ignoring the trivial many. Most people spend their lives painting the walls of a house that is currently on fire. And finally, the shade. Strategic rest is a secret weapon, not laziness. A rested mind spots opportunities that a tired one will always miss. But there is a catch. You cannot build a system, find your focus, or enjoy the shade if you are still obsessed with the stone you've picked up from other people's deserts. These 3 principles only work for those who have cleared their hand of what isn't theirs. Wait until you see the physical transformation Thomas underwent the moment he let go. It's a shift that most people are too terrified to even attempt, and I'll show you why in the next section. Thomas didn't just walk away, he unbuckled those heavy straps like he was escaping a sinking ship. He finally realized that holding onto his suffering was just a slow way of committing professional suicide. He dumped those heavy barrels right there in the sand, watching his old identity, the one that felt proud of being a martyr, blow away in the breeze. For the first time in years, his back felt straight, and his eyes were actually focused on the horizon. Instead of pushing through the blinding noon sun, he now sat in the shade, with a map and a solid plan. This wasn't downtime, it was the high-level sharpening of his mental axe that would save him weeks of labor. He traded his brute force mindset for a navigator's precision, realizing that strategic thinking is the ultimate shortcut. He stopped being a beast of burden and became the CEO of his own desert crossing. But here's the most important part. Thomas could only start planning his route because he had finally emptied his hands of the weights he was never meant to carry. Most people try to plan while still clutching their stone, but your brain cannot navigate while it is in survival mode. In a few moments, I'm going to show you inventory of stone, the exact method Thomas used to identify which weights to drop, and how you can apply it to your life. But first, you need to see the staggering difference in his bank account once he stopped trying to be a hero. On his very next trek, Thomas rolled into the great oasis while the sun was still sitting low and friendly. He didn't look like a man who'd survived a disaster. He looked like a man who'd just enjoyed a scenic tour. While the hustlers were arriving days later, dragging their bruised heels, Thomas was already closing his first deals. His record-breaking speed wasn't a miracle of muscle, but a total masterpiece of a sharpened mental axe. When he finally checked his ledgers, he realized he'd pulled in a solid 40% more profit than ever before. Since he wasn't spending his own physical life force to move the goods, he had plenty of energy left to negotiate. Thomas was living proof that the size of your bank account isn't tied to the amount of pain you endure. He had officially graduated from being a beast of burden to a high-level navigator who understood the terrain. But here is the most shocking part. The 40% increase in profit was the direct result of the 60% of weight he chose to leave behind in the sand. You see, your growth is currently being taxed by every emotional and professional stone you refuse to let go of. I'm about to show you how to identify these hidden profit killers in your own life. But first, you must realize why even successful people often fail the final test of the navigator that I'll reveal in our conclusion. Are you walking 20 miles in a circle today, wondering why the finish line keeps moving away? It's time to stop measuring your personal worth by how tired you feel at the end of every day. Look at your hands. Are they raw because you're a hero, or just because you're being stubborn? An exhausted body is often just evidence of a mind that hasn't taken the time to sharpen its blade. Don't let your pride in your hustle blind you to the fact that you're currently standing perfectly still. The secret of the 1% isn't that they have more hours, but that they have better levers at their disposal. Most people die in the metaphorical desert simply because they were too busy to stop and check their compass. But let's be honest. The reason you haven't checked your compass yet is that you are deathly afraid of what will happen if you drop the heavy barrel you've been carrying for everyone else. You've been conditioned to believe that your misery is a prerequisite for your victory, but I'm about to show you why. That lie is the very thing keeping you parched. In just a second, I will reveal the navigator's exit strategy, the only way to safely dump the stones that aren't yours without losing your progress, but only for those who are ready to stop being a beast of burden and start being an architect of their own ease. Thomas finally arrived at the great oasis, but he didn't get there by walking more miles. He got there by becoming someone new, someone who refused to be a beast of burden. He realized that his exhaustion wasn't a mandatory requirement for victory. It was just a choice he'd been making every single day by refusing to stop and optimize. Many of the stories you hear here aren't just stories. They reflect the invisible weight you may be carrying every day, the weights that Thomas eventually left behind in the dust. If you're tired of holding pain, responsibility, and guilt that were never yours, it is time to perform your own practical turn. I created a specialized tool for this exact moment called the ebook, The Weight of Stones That Are Not Yours. This is your digital compass and camel. It's designed specifically for those who want to let go, set boundaries, and finally live with the lightness Richard possessed. When you grab your copy today, I'm also including 2 essential navigator's guides to ensure you never sink in the sand again. Bonus 1, Learning to Let Go. The step-by-step manual on how to unbuckle the straps of those heavy barrels you've been carrying. Bonus 2, When Saying No is an Act of Self-Love. The ultimate guide to mastering the law of the shade, ensuring you protect your energy for the paths that actually lead to the oasis. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Don't be the hero of sweat who gets buried by their own dedication. Be the navigator who actually arrives. 1 hour of strategic reading will outperform 100 hours of blind, frantic. Click the link, drop the weight, and let's start your real journey today.